Great touch off the glass.
Jordan, Blackman in the lane. They swung it up top, piece of deep.
5 seconds on the shot clock.
Rolando Blackman did not get big, but he could really play. For years, he was one of the most dependable scorers in the whole NBA. He hit tough shots. He guarded the other team's best player. He showed up every single night. But on one of the biggest nights of his career, he never left the bench. It was Game 7 of the 1994 NBA Finals. The New York Knicks were playing the Houston Rockets. The whole season came down to this one game. New York needed points. Their offense was falling apart in front of everyone watching. John Starks, the young guard, could not find his shot. He missed shot after shot. By the end of the night, he had gone 2 for 18 from the field. He missed all 10 of his three-point shots. It was one of the worst shooting nights in finals history. And through all of that, Rolando Blackman sat and watched. He did not get up. He did not check into the game. And if this story already surprised you, use the hype feature and give this video some hype so more fans can find it. Blackman was a veteran. He knew how to score in tough moments. Reports say some Houston players were surprised he never played. Some were even relieved. Pat Riley, the Knicks coach, later said he regretted the choice. That one missing chance became the final image of Blackman's career. He was ready. He was respected. But he stayed on the bench during the biggest moment of his life. So how does a four-time All-Star with over 17,000 career points become so easy for people to forget? To answer that, we have to go back to where it all began. Long before the NBA, long before Dallas, back to a hard childhood in New York City. Rolando Blackman grew up in a hard home. Money was tight. Food was not always there. His household could be tense and unpredictable. Every day he rode the subway a long way just to get to school. Life was not easy for him as a kid. Basketball did not come easy either. He tried out for his junior high school team. He got cut. He tried again the next year. He got cut again. This happened 3 years in a row. Most kids would have quit. Blackman did not quit. Getting cut over and over made him more determined, not less. He wanted to master the basics of the game. He wanted to be ready the next time he got a chance. That chance came when a man named Ted Gustis stepped into his life. Gustis became more than a coach. He became a father figure for Blackman. He gave him structure. He gave him support. He pushed him to work on his footwork, his shot, and his defense every single day. As a teenager, Blackman suddenly grew taller. He shot up to 6 feet 6 inches. That kind of height usually means one thing in basketball. Colleges wanted him to play forward, down near the basket. Many young players would have taken that easy path. Big schools wanted him, but Ted Gustis saw something different. He believed Blackman had guard skills hiding inside a forward's body. He told him to become what people call a big guard, a tall player who could still handle the ball, shoot from outside, and defend smaller, quicker players. That advice changed everything. Blackman turned down Syracuse. He turned down almost 200 other schools that came calling. Instead, he chose Kansas State, a smaller program, because head coach Jack Hartman promised to use him as a guard, not a forward. That single decision shaped his whole career. Under Hartman's coaching, Blackman sharpened his footwork. He built a smooth pull-up jump shot. He learned how to use screens the right way. He learned how to stay in front of quick opponents on defense. Every one of those skills came from years of hard, quiet practice. None of it happened by accident. Think about what his early life taught him. A hard home life taught him to expect adversity. Getting cut 3 years straight taught him patience and repetition. A long subway ride every day taught him discipline before he even touched a basketball. These were not glamorous lessons. They were survival lessons. They shaped a player who valued being ready over being seen. He learned to be consistent instead of loud. He learned to be dependable instead of flashy. Those traits would make him one of the most trusted players in the NBA one day, but they were never going to make him a walking headline. Fans and cameras tend to notice players who demand attention. Blackman was never built that way. He was built to be solid every night, no matter who was watching. That quiet foundation, formed in hard times as a kid in New York, followed him through college and into the pros. It made him great at his job. It also made him easy for the wider world to look past. The very things that made him reliable were the same things that kept him from becoming a household name. Before the NBA years, though, there was still one more level to climb. College basketball was waiting, and with it came the biggest opportunity of his young life. An opportunity that would almost carry him onto one of the greatest stages sports has to offer. Every one of these early struggles built the same lesson over and over. Show up, work hard, do not expect shortcuts. That lesson never left him, not in high school, not in college, and not during his long NBA career. At Kansas State, Blackman thrived under Jack Hartman's disciplined system. Hartman demanded effort on both ends of the floor. Blackman answered that demand again and again. He won Big 8 Defensive Player of the Year 3 years in a row. That is not a small thing. It means the best coaches in his conference agreed year after year that no one guarded better than he did. In 1980, he added another huge honor. He was named Big 8 Player of the Year, the top player in the whole conference. His game had range and it had moments too. In 1981, Kansas State faced Oregon State, a team ranked number 2 in the entire country. The game came down to the final seconds. Blackman rose up from 17 feet away, right along the baseline, and buried the shot. Kansas State pulled off the upset. Plays like that get remembered. People who saw it never forgot it. By this point, Blackman was one of the best guards in college basketball, and the basketball world noticed. He earned a spot as a starting guard on the 1980 United States Olympic team. Back then, Olympic basketball only used amateur players, mostly college stars. It was one of the biggest platforms a young American player could ever step onto. Making that Olympic team should have introduced Blackman to the entire country before he even played an NBA game. It could have meant TV coverage. It could have meant endorsement deals. It could have meant instant name recognition with casual sports fans who had never watched a Kansas State game in their lives. Then politics stepped in. The Soviet Union had invaded Afghanistan. In response, President Jimmy Carter ordered the United States to boycott the 1980 Moscow Olympics. American athletes across every sport lost their chance to compete that summer. Blackman lost his chance too. The research also points to another layer to this story. At the time, Blackman was reportedly a nationalized resident but had not yet become a fully naturalized United States citizen. Some reports suggest that detail could have caused a serious eligibility problem, even a risk of forfeited medals, had the boycott not happened first. Either way, the boycott closed a door that never reopened. Blackman never got to wear the flag on that stage. Compare that to a player like Isaiah Thomas, who used a strong amateur and Olympic profile to help launch his name into the national spotlight before he ever set foot in an NBA arena. Blackman did not get that same head start. He entered the NBA as a talented but relatively unknown rookie instead of a name millions of casual fans already recognized. It is one of the biggest what-if moments of his whole career. A single political decision made for reasons that had nothing to do with basketball took away a stage that could have introduced Rolando Blackman to the entire nation before he ever wore an NBA jersey. Instead, he would have to build his name the long way, one professional season at a time, for a brand new team that barely anyone outside of Texas was paying attention to yet. Think about how different his path could have looked. Millions of casual fans first learn a player's name through the Olympics, not through box scores in a small market. That is exactly the kind of introduction Blackman never received. He did not get to stand with the American team on TV screens across the country. He did not get the instant credibility that comes from representing your nation on the biggest amateur stage in the world. Other players from that same Olympic generation used that platform to build household names before their pro careers even started. Blackman had to build his name the slow way instead, one professional game at a time, without that early national spotlight ever shining on him first. It remains one of the clearest examples in sports history of politics quietly reshaping a career before that career had even truly begun. In 1981, the Dallas Mavericks selected Rolando Blackman with the 9th overall pick. Dallas was not an old established team. It was a brand new expansion franchise. It had no long history. It had no built-in national fan base. It had none of the automatic respect that older teams in older markets already carried. Brad Davis, the original Mavericks point guard, watched this problem up close from the very start. He saw how hard it was for a new team to get real national attention. Unless a player was putting up jaw-dropping numbers or creating some kind of controversy, the national media simply looked the other way. Blackman did neither of those things. He played smart, efficient, winning basketball. He did not chase big stat lines. He did not make headlines off the court. He just showed up and performed, night after night, for a franchise most of the country was not watching closely. James Donaldson, the veteran center who anchored those Dallas teams, saw the same quiet consistency from Blackman every single day. Donaldson said Blackman brought the same strong effort every night. whether the cameras were there or not. He played like an all-star even in games that got almost no national coverage. He did not lead with speeches. He did not lead with conflict. He led by preparing hard and performing his role the same way, over and over. That kind of steady professionalism is exactly what winning teams need. Coaches love it, teammates depend on it. But it is not the kind of thing that makes highlight shows or magazine covers. National attention, especially in that era, tended to follow big personalities, dramatic moments, or teams with a long, storied history behind them. Dallas had none of that yet. It was still building its own identity from scratch. Blackman helped build that identity through steady winning, not through noise. Over time, the Mavericks improved. They became a real playoff contender. Fans in Dallas grew to love this team, and they grew to love Blackman as one of its steady leaders. But regional respect and national fame are two very different things. You can be adored in your own city and still be practically invisible everywhere else. That is exactly what happened to Blackman during these years. He was doing everything right. He was winning games. He was respected by teammates and coaches, yet outside of Texas, his name rarely came up in conversations about the league's biggest stars. Being a professional in a quiet, team-first way was exactly what Dallas needed from him. It built a winning culture. It just did not build a national brand. And in a sports world, increasingly built around personality and spectacle, that trade-off would follow him for the rest of his career. Consider what national media outlets tended to cover in that era. They covered teams with long histories, big arenas and famous cities, and players who made headlines off the court as well as on it. Dallas offered almost none of that when Blackman arrived. It was a new roster, a new arena, and a new fan base still learning to love the game. Every win the Mavericks earned in those early years was a win built from nothing, with no cushion of past glory to lean on. Blackman helped carry that weight quietly. He did not demand credit for it. He simply kept performing at a high level year after year, while the rest of the country slowly began to notice that Dallas basketball was worth paying attention to. By the time people truly started watching, some of his best individual seasons were already behind him, absorbed into a young franchise's long, unglamorous climb toward respectability. That is the quiet cost of playing for a franchise still building its own name from the ground up. One season, one win, one overlooked performance at a time. Dallas did not have just one great scorer. It had several, and that made things complicated for Blackman's national profile. Mark Aguirre had been the very first overall pick in the 1981 draft, the same year Blackman arrived. Aguirre played a high-usage style. He controlled a large share of the offense and took a large share of the shots. During his years in Dallas, Aguirre averaged 6 points per game. Together, Blackman and Aguirre formed one of the most dangerous scoring duos in the league, but Aguirre's bold, high-volume style pulled in most of the media attention. Blackman was rarely treated as the lone star of the team. He was always sharing the spotlight with someone else. And the scoring depth did not stop there. Dale Ellis, a future All-NBA level scorer, sat on the bench for years behind Blackman. Ellis was that talented, and Blackman still started ahead of him. When Ellis eventually moved to the Seattle Supersonics, he immediately averaged 9 points per game. Think about what that means. A player good enough to average almost 25 points a game somewhere else could not even crack the starting lineup in Dallas, because Blackman held down that shooting guard spot so firmly. That says a lot about how good Blackman really was. It also explains why his own scoring numbers rarely became gigantic. With Aguirre, Ellis, and other scorers all sharing the ball, there simply were not enough shots to go around for any one player to pile up jaw-dropping totals. Later, the Mavericks traded Aguirre to Detroit for Adrian Dantley. On paper, Dantley was another elite scorer. In practice, Blackman and Dantley never developed strong chemistry on the court. The pieces did not fit together the way the front office hoped. Around the same time, big man Roy Tarpley battled serious injury problems that limited his availability. Tarpley had been a key part of the team's future plans, and losing him hurt Dallas's chances of building a true championship contender. Slowly, the team's championship window began to close. Blackman found himself in an unusual position. He was clearly good enough to keep a future All-NBA scorer like Dale Ellis glued to the bench. At the same time, he was surrounded by so much other offensive talent that his individual numbers rarely became overwhelming compared to the league's biggest stars. He was a key piece of a genuinely stacked roster, but being one strong piece among several strong pieces, is not the same as being the one undeniable face of a franchise. National fame tends to follow whoever stands out the most on a single roster. In Dallas, several players could make that claim at different times, and that constant sharing of the spotlight kept any one of them, including Blackman, from becoming the singular symbol of the team in the eyes of the country. Picture the math of it simply. A basketball game only has so many shots to go around. When 3 or 4 players on one roster can all score at a high level, no single player gets to take all of those shots. Aguirre needed his shots. Dale Ellis, sitting on the bench, still deserved shots whenever he did get on the floor. Later, Dantley needed touches too. Blackman fit into that mix instead of standing above it. That made Dallas dangerous as a team. It also meant that Blackman's own scoring totals, while excellent, rarely reached the kind of jaw-dropping numbers that dominate record books and highlight shows. National attention often follows raw scoring totals more than it follows winning basketball or complete team performance. A player who averages a modest, efficient total on a deep, well-balanced roster can easily get overlooked next to a player who scores in bunches on a team with fewer other options. That is close to what happened with Blackman. He was excellent, but he was excellent inside a system built to share the ball, not built to spotlight one single star above everybody else on the roster. Derek Harper became Blackman's longtime partner in the Dallas backcourt. Together, they formed one of the most underrated guard pairings of the whole decade. Harper saw firsthand just how much Blackman sacrificed on defense. Blackman had built his defensive game back in college, where he won 3 straight Conference Defensive Player of the Year awards. That habit carried straight into the pros. Night after night, Blackman drew the assignment of guarding the other team's best perimeter scorer. That job takes an enormous amount of energy. Chasing a great scorer around screens for 36 minutes wears a player down. It leaves less in the tank for chasing easy transition buckets or hunting extra shots on offense. Blackman never complained about that trade-off. He simply did the job. He refused to chase empty stats just to inflate his own scoring average. He believed in team structure over individual glory. His offense reflected that same mindset. He built his scoring around controlled mid-range shots instead of wild, high-risk attempts. He used screens the correct way. His footwork was clean and repeatable. His pull-up jumper looked almost the same every single time he shot it. That kind of mechanical consistency made him incredibly reliable, game after game, season after season. Coaches valued that kind of consistency deeply. Teammates depended on it every night. A player who always gives the same high-level effort on both ends of the floor is exactly what winning teams are built around. But there is a difference between what wins basketball games and what wins public attention. Highlight shows do not usually show a smart, unselfish, hard-fought defensive possession. They show a thunderous dunk, or a wild, difficult shot, or an emotional outburst. Blackman's game asked people to pay close attention to small details, like footwork, spacing, and defensive positioning. The growing TV culture of that era rewarded something different. It rewarded explosive plays, huge shot totals, and big visible personalities. Blackman was not lacking athletic ability. He had a quick first step and real scoring touch. What he lacked was a public identity built around spectacle. His identity was built around control, discipline, and sacrifice instead. Those qualities made him one of the most trusted players on his team. They made him one of the least talked about stars of his generation on national television. The very sacrifice that made him great on the court became one more reason the rest of the country barely noticed just how good he really was. Think about what a single defensive possession actually costs a player physically. Fighting through screens for 36 minutes, staying low, staying alert, and chasing a great scorer across the entire court takes real energy out of a player's legs. That energy does not come back on the other end of the floor. Every possession spent locking down an opponent is a possession where a player has a little less left in the tank to create his own shot. Blackman accepted that trade every night without complaint. He understood his role and he played it fully. That kind of sacrifice rarely gets celebrated the way scoring does. A 30-point night gets replayed on highlight shows for years. A tough defensive possession that limits an all-star to 4 points below his average almost never gets the same attention, even though it can matter just as much to winning the game. Blackman's game lived in that second category, the quiet, unglamorous category that wins basketball games without ever winning much attention from the wider public watching from home. Real winning basketball often looks boring on TV, even when it takes just as much skill and effort as the flashiest highlight of the night. Clyde Drexler was one of the greatest shooting guards of his generation. He later named Rolando Blackman as the toughest matchup of his entire career. Think about that for a second. A Hall of Famer, someone who played against the very best players in the world, pointed to Blackman as the hardest cover he ever faced. Drexler talked about Blackman's fast first step. He talked about a smooth pull-up jumper that landed with the same mechanical accuracy every time. Drexler believed Blackman could have scored a lot more than he did. He said the lower scoring totals came down to choice, not ability. Blackman played team basketball. He refused to take 35 shots in a single game just to chase a bigger number. According to Drexler, that discipline was the only reason defenders like him ever caught a break against him. Byron Scott faced Blackman even earlier, back in college. Scott remembered Blackman dominating him during a matchup between Arizona State and Kansas State. He later summed up Blackman's scoring ability in simple words, saying Blackman would get buckets. That is not just a compliment. That is one great scorer recognizing another one. Here's the real problem, though. Respect from opposing defenders never shows up on a highlight reel that casual fans watch. It never shows up in a national ranking of top stars either. The gap between what defenders knew and what fans saw was enormous, and there was one more obstacle standing between Blackman and the biggest stage of all. The Los Angeles Lakers ruled the Western Conference for most of the decade. They reached the NBA Finals in 8 out of 10 seasons. Dallas built a genuinely good team around Blackman. In 1988, the Mavericks pushed the mighty Lakers to 7 full games in the Western Conference Finals. It was as close as Blackman's Dallas teams ever came to reaching the NBA Finals. They still came up short. That single wall, the Lakers blocked Dallas from ever reaching the ultimate stage during Blackman's prime. Without a finals run, there was no signature moment for the whole country to watch. There was no defining playoff image to replay for years afterward. The very players forced to guard Blackman understood exactly how dangerous he was. Clyde Drexler said so directly. Byron Scott said so directly. But personal respect from elite opponents could never replace a championship run. And it could never replace the constant national television exposure that comes with reaching the NBA Finals year after year. That gap between deep respect from the best players in the game and near invisibility to the wider public sits at the very center of Rolando Blackman's story. Think about how rare it is for a Hall of Fame level player to single out one specific opponent above everyone else he ever faced. Drexler played against legends across an entire era of basketball. Naming Blackman above all of them says something enormous about the difficulty Blackman created on the floor. Byron Scott's words carry that same weight. Scott was not a bench player or a role player. He was a champion, a key piece of one of the greatest teams in NBA history. When a player like that says another guard would simply get buckets, that is high praise coming from someone who knew exactly how hard scoring at a high level really was. Yet none of that respect from elite peers ever fully reached the casual fan sitting at home. Casual fans mostly followed championships, finals appearances, and constant national television coverage. Dallas could not offer any of that during Blackman's prime, no matter how many tough playoff series the team fought through. The Lakers stood in the way, year after year, like a wall that never moved. Every close series against Los Angeles proved how good Dallas really was, without ever changing the final outcome that mattered most to the national conversation. That contrasts so much respect from the players who guarded him, so little recognition from the fans who never saw him play in a single NBA Finals game. Tells you almost everything you need to know about how national fame actually works in professional sports. Jim Jackson arrived in Dallas in 1992, right around the time Blackman's run with the team ended. His arrival marked the start of a very different chapter for the Mavericks, a hard rebuilding period. The losing that followed was severe. Dallas finished one season with a record of 11 wins and 71 losses. Not long after, they finished another season at 13 wins and 69 losses. Seasons that bad tend to erase memories of what came before them. Fans who grew up watching those brutal years connected the Mavericks mainly with struggle, not with the strong playoff teams of the 1980s. Years later, when Dallas finally became great again, it was under a completely different star, Dirk Nowitzki. An entire new generation of fans grew up associating the Mavericks almost entirely with Nowitzki's era. The earlier era, Blackman's era, faded further into the background. There is also a matter of simple timing. Blackman played his best basketball before the NBA's biggest global expansion truly took off. The explosion of worldwide broadcasting and the huge growth in shoe company marketing, mostly arrived in the mid-1990s, right as Blackman's career was ending. He landed in an awkward gap between two basketball eras. He came after the league's older, more regional period. He came before the massive, global, superstar-driven marketing machine that later generations of players benefited from. Nowitzki himself eventually broke Blackman's Mavericks scoring record, a fact that shows just how much the franchise moved on and grew after Blackman left. None of this erases what Blackman actually did on the court. It simply explains why his achievements became easier and easier to forget as the years rolled on. There was no championship film constantly replaying his biggest moments on TV specials. There was no signature ring pulling his highlights back into the conversation every single year. Instead, hard losing seasons and a whole new star covered up the memory of what came before. Blackman's Dallas story quietly faded, right as the sport itself was about to grow bigger than ever. And just as that door closed in Dallas, a new door opened for Blackman, one final chance with a new team in a new city, the New York Knicks. Memory in sports can be strange that way. A single dramatic era, whether painfully bad or wonderfully great, tends to overwrite whatever quietly came before it. Fans naturally talk more about the years they personally remember watching. For a long stretch of Mavericks history, that meant either the losing years right after Blackman left, or the winning years that arrived much later with Nowitzki leading the way. The strong, competitive teams Blackman helped build in the middle of it all simply got squeezed out of the conversation, even though they were every bit as real and every bit as impressive at the time they happened. A great career does not disappear just because fewer people are talking about it. It simply waits quietly for someone to look back and tell the story properly again. In June of 1992, the Mavericks traded the 33-year-old Rolando Blackman to the New York Knicks. New York wanted his experience. They wanted a veteran scorer who could still hit tough shots off the bench. Head coach Pat Riley built his Knicks around tough, physical defense. Blackman reunited with his old Dallas backcourt partner, Derek Harper, who had also joined the Knicks. Together, this hard-nosed New York team fought its way to the 1994 NBA Finals against the Houston Rockets. It became one of the most intense final series in league history. Game after game, both defenses dominated. Scoring was hard to come by for everyone. Riley stuck with a rigid, short rotation throughout the series. He leaned on the younger John Starks instead of turning to his experienced veteran. Blackman did not play a single minute in the entire 1994 Finals. New York's offense suffered through serious scoring droughts during the series. Patrick Ewing, the team's star center, struggled badly with his shot at times. Then came Game 7, the deciding game of the whole season. John Starks had one of the worst shooting nights any player has ever had on that big of a stage. He shot 2 for 18 from the field. He missed all 10 of his three-point attempts. New York's offense completely collapsed at the worst possible moment. Blackman stayed on the bench the entire time. The research points to reports of real tension inside that Knicks locker room. Blackman had reportedly asked whether players' wives could join the team for the road trip to Houston. Riley reportedly said no. Around that same period, teammate Anthony Mason had already been suspended after publicly criticizing Riley. Put together, these reports suggest a tense, strained team atmosphere, although the exact link between that tension and Blackman's playing time is not fully confirmed. What is confirmed is Riley's own reaction afterward. He later said he deeply regretted not using Blackman during that series. On the other side of the court, Rockets players reportedly felt real relief that Blackman never checked into the game. Backup guard Scott Brooks later described that reaction. Houston had struggled for years trying to guard Blackman's smooth mid-range pull-up shot, and they worried about what he could do if given the chance in a close, tense moment. The research suggests that even a short appearance from Blackman might have helped settle New York's struggling offense. It does not prove he would have won the game outright. It only shows that the possibility existed, and that possibility never got tested. A championship in New York, the biggest media market in the country, could have completely rewritten the public story of Rolando Blackman's career. It could have given him a ring. It could have given him one unforgettable star-making moment on the biggest stage basketball has to offer. It could have made him remembered forever as a clutch veteran who delivered when it mattered most. Instead, his career reached its final act quietly, from a seat on the bench. His story did not end with the public watching him fail in a big moment. It ended with the public barely getting the chance to watch him at all. Think about how differently this story could read today. A veteran shooting guard, brought in specifically for his shooting and his poise in big moments, never getting a single meaningful chance in the very finals his team fought so hard to reach. It is one of the strangest coaching decisions of that entire era, made even stranger by how badly the team's offense actually struggled without any answer coming off the bench. Riley's own later regret confirms just how much this decision haunted him personally. He was not simply defending a coaching choice years later. He was admitting a mistake that may have cost his team a championship in the biggest series of his coaching career, with a trusted veteran sitting only a few feet away the entire time. So did Rolando Blackman ever really get big? Not in the way the biggest superstars of his era did, but fame and real basketball value are two very different things, and his career proves it clearly. He finished with 17,623 career points. He earned 4 NBA All-Star selections. He held the Dallas Mavericks scoring record for almost 2 decades, until Dirk Nowitzki finally passed him. In 2000, the Mavericks retired his number 22 jersey, a permanent honor inside the arena where he built his legacy. In 2015, he was inducted into the National Collegiate Basketball Hall of Fame for his historic run at Kansas State. His story did not stop when his NBA career ended. He kept playing professionally overseas, winning the Italian League and Cup with Olimpia Milano in 1996, and earning Cup MVP honors along the way. Later, he moved into coaching, working with the German and Turkish national teams, and helping Turkey capture a silver medal at the 2010 FIBA World Championship. He returned to the Mavericks in front office roles, serving in basketball development and corporate relations, shaping the franchise from behind the scenes for years afterward. Beyond basketball, he became a global goodwill ambassador, connected with the NBA and the United Nations, working on humanitarian efforts in West Africa, focused on fighting child trafficking and reducing youth violence among young people. A name so close to his own, Rolando Blackman, sometimes causes confusion online. But that is a completely different player with a completely different story. Rolando Blackman's real story is not about a modern exhibition league. It is about steady excellence, quiet leadership, and a life that kept giving back long after the final buzzer of his playing career. He never became the loudest name of his generation. He never got the massive global marketing push that later stars enjoyed, but every teammate who played beside him trusted him completely. Every opponent who guarded against him respected him deeply. Rolando Blackman may not have become the biggest name in basketball, but he built a life and a career that still deserve to be remembered. Value in basketball is not only measured by fame. It is measured by trust, by consistency, and by the respect of the people who actually shared the court with him. Blackman earned all three, night after night, for almost his entire career. That is legacy worth honoring.